In this video, we're going to talk about allowing alternative displays of knowledge. And basically what I'm talking about there is you may have a test that you're going to give for a particular unit that you're covering. But is there a way to allow your students to demonstrate the same knowledge that would be on the test in some other way? Any way that could be. And we'll talk about some of those examples. So first, why should you change? Well, not all students are good test takers, right? I personally am not a good test taker. And so I actually always did way better in my classes that had essays and things like that, the projects, than I did with really test heavy classes. So it's just, and it's not an important skill. I'll be honest with you. It's important to get to and through college, but after that, I don't think I've taken a test in 20 years. And the last one was my teaching license test, and that was a joke. So it's just not a lifelong skill that they need. It's a short-term skill. Students with writing IEPs. So I had a student who had an IEP in writing, and he had a literal issue with the mechanics of his hand to the point where it hurt for him to write for more than 5 minutes. And so if I had an assessment for him that involved a lot of writing, he basically couldn't participate in it. So I had him take an iPad out in the hall or to the room with the special education teacher, and he would record he would say the question out loud, reading the test, and then talk about his knowledge and thinking about it. Worked great. Student motivation. So if a student is allowed to do something in their own way, they get a little bit more excited. For example, I had a student, we were doing the organelles of a cell way back in the day, and they decided they wanted to do a model of the cell within Minecraft. And I was blown away at the level of detail it did it. And this is not a student who normally engaged, but loved Minecraft, and so put a ton of time into it. Now, how do you do it? Well, obviously you're just going to allow students to retake assessments, but like the practical part is that it can be tough, right? It can be time intensive for a teacher to allow a lot of retakes on assessments. So one way to do it, the way I absolutely love doing it, is a verbal test. So if the student did not do very well, or they only had a couple questions that are mistakes, just have a quick conversation with them. Probably in 10 minutes, a 10-minute conversation, you can get a very good idea of what their knowledge is and give them a different grade on that assessment. And if it's just like one question, that makes it even easier. Just ask them about one question, and then they can go from there. A lot of teachers require evidence that the student put in some time. A lot of teachers will talk about, well, they'll just keep retaking the test like a roulette wheel, or like gambling to see if they'll do better the next time. But if you require that they prove that they have put in time studying, then that can eliminate some of that issue. You can just use an open-ended version of the test. So if your test has multiple choice or fill in the blank or something like that, just give them a similar question, but have it be very open-ended. And that way they have to do more work. When they actually take the test, it's a little bit harder for them. Yeah, it's a little harder for you to regrade, but you probably have fewer individual pieces to do. Again, I would prefer just doing that verbally, but some people want students to do it written, especially if it's a writing test. Have students make a video demonstrating knowledge, and this is getting into another topic, which is allowing for alternative displays of knowledge. But students with IEPs in writing in particular, I have found really just don't want to do an assessment that involves writing. So is it possible for them to do a video instead? So maybe they can verbally do it, or they can type it, or something like that, that allows them to demonstrate knowledge that and in a different way, just in letting them do it in a different way. And then, so how do you do it? Well,
one neat idea that I've never done before,
right?
but I'm really curious about this,
to
is
do.
the idea of using a more recent assessment to
give students a choice in how they will demonstrate learning.
This happens all the time, right? You'll have
That's
a
kind of the
concept that
basics
shows
of
up
it.
later.
And what does it look like? Well, it could be a verbal
test,
that
like I talked about with the student,
requires a student to understand a
they could
concept
make a
from
video
earlier in the term.
So,
and so if they could
it
demonstrate
so
the knowledge
verbal
of
by
that
verbal,
concept
it could also
from
be
earlier in the term,
literally right in
then
front of you.
that
You
might
could
be
just
able to
have a little
replace
conversation with them
that
and ask them
assessment.
about
It can get a little bit
content, see if
tricky
they know
trying
it.
to figure out
I
what does
really
that
like that
mean and
version
how does
for
that work.
retakes. So
But
if a
if
student
you,
missed a
especially
certain
if you keep
problem
your
with
assessment
retakes,
short,
I
it makes it a
often
little
will
bit
have
easier.
to do
Because
that.
if one
Make a
assessment
video,
is only on one
they
topic,
can do a video
then it's easier to
presentation,
retake.
or they can do an actual presentation to you at lunch,
yeah,
at school, maybe in class, if that's something that you want to take time for. And then the other one is drawings or modeling. And I don't know why modeling won. That was just a typo. But allowing a student to do something, if they're a real artistic student, I have had students who really love to do that. In science, we do a lot of scientific modeling. So having them demonstrate their knowledge and understanding through a model is totally fine with me. So just giving them some options and some freedom and flexibility. Now, pushbacks. It's not fair to other students, right? It's how are you going to accurately and fairly measure the knowledge of one student compared to the other when you have two different tests? And the pushback that I give for that one is that my classroom is not about being fair, it's about being accurate. And so I want to accurately be able to reflect a student's knowledge. That's what I'm looking for. There are other tricks on that one. When you start using more of a standards-based scale, then it gets a little bit easier. Does this student understand this concept or not? And at what level do they? Are they exceeding it? Are they meeting it? Are they not meeting it? And you use some of that language in there. It's not did they get a 92% or an 84%, but it's like, do you understand this concept or not? That is the question I'm wanting to know. And that's what your grade is based on. So that fairness kind of starts to break down there. It's not unfair then if you start using that kind of system. It's too hard to grade, right? That's really common. People say it's like, I need something to be really efficient to grade, like multiple choice. And I totally understand that. I totally get it. And it will take some more time. It's probably going to take you more time to grade this way. And I get that. But again, for certain students, you might pick and choose. You might say, this is an option for this particular student because of this reason. And you might go back to that fairness question, but is it fair that student also has this disability in their hand? It's not their choice in that case. Sounds like a lot of work. We talked a lot about this before. So yeah, those are some of the more common pushbacks. So let me know what you think. I'm really curious, and see you in the next video.